Well, it's close enough to 8 o'clock. Why don't we get started? Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
This is Jim. I'll make the motion to approve the agenda as stated.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, let's get started with the first action item, the award of construction contract, Trap Rock Water Treatment Facility standby generator.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Amulya Paudel, Program Manager with Capital Programs Group. I am here this morning to seek your approval on award of construction contract for Trap Rock Water Treatment Facility standby generator project. As the name suggests, this project is at the Trap Rock Water Treatment site. Zooming into the site, this is the pointer, I guess. Yeah. So this building here is the generator and electrical room at the plant. And this project, the contractor's work is pretty much limited within the footprint of that building. Trap Rock, when it was originally commissioned in 2018, it has a backup generator, 2,000 kilowatt Cummins generator that's capable of sustaining about 50% of the current permitted capacity, which is 20 MGD. However, as you are aware, we're in the process of expanding the plant. So in order to provide additional backup capacity to current production limits, and also to support future expansion, we are in need of a second generator. And this is what this project, and that was the reason we undertook this project, is to add that second generator, which will help increase redundancy and resiliency to the system. I don't think that was a question. No.
Okay, good.
No, I was
So,
just clearing my throat. Sorry.
At the beginning of the design, like kind of in the preliminary phases of the design, we evaluated a couple different generator options, but it was decided that the most efficient way to do this would be to have a functional duplicate generator, because the original design made provisions for adding a second generator in the future. And it only made sense to get the same functional duplicate generator. So we settled on Cummins generator. And also talking to Cummins, a generator of this size at that time had about 92 weeks of lead time. And what we concluded is it made sense for Loudon Water to go ahead and procure the generator and have this contractor basically just install the generator and associated work. So the contractor's scope on this project is to install the owner purchased generator, associated mechanical works, which includes this exhaust piping system here, a shroud, and then not covered in the picture, but behind a large louver for ventilation. So a bunch of mechanical works. There is a medium voltage electrical wiring and integrating this generator into the existing system, as well as fuel system associated with this new generator. So relatively small project, but a couple different disciplines have to come to work for successful completion of this project.
How many weeks did you say?
It's the time we ordered it, the estimate Cummins gave us was 92 weeks. 92, almost 2 years. Yeah, but then as the things progressed, though, they were providing us monthly update, but finally it turned out like they're able to deliver it 56 weeks. So it did go down. So we were scheduled to get this November of 2025, later like towards the end of this year, but their final schedule, we're getting it end of May. So it did come, or it is coming earlier than.
What is the reason behind the lead time?
Too many orders. They said they just cannot keep up with the order.
Are they made in America?
Yes, Chicago, I guess, Indianapolis.
And I think that's an indicator, that lead time is an indicator of some other things that we've seen in the project in terms of just the overall demand for this type of work, electrical work with the industry, here in Ashburn data centers.
Do we have needs for other generators and other facilities? There similar need for things with long lead times?
Not obviously not this site generator, but we do have another project in our CIP, and we're actually just starting that process at Cortland Pump Station. We are in need of another generator, but it seems like the lead time on the smaller ones are not this bad.
If they're so busy, what about possible repairs or warranty type stuff? They have the capacity?
Yeah, so mostly like maintenance, we have some kind of contract with Cummins, and they like recently we did need some maintenance work at Brambleton Pump Station. It took a little bit more time than what we were hoping for, but I think they're local company or local brands that handles maintenance. They seem okay. They seem responsive. I haven't heard major issues on the maintenance side of things, unless somebody have heard.
Are there frequent parts that pop up and
As part of this particular generator, yes, our specification did indicate specific spares, and we are getting it through this purchase order.
Yeah, we have Cummins generators, throughout our facilities and are really comfortable with this manufacturer and getting good response from them.
Amelia, Mr. Moody has a question.
Yes, good morning, Amelia. You'd mentioned that there's, this new generator is currently to fill the additional capacity. You said there currently has 50% of the 20 MGD, which mean that you only currently have 10% or 10 MGD covered. Is the new generator only providing additional 10 MGD, but you also mentioned they're supposed to support future expansion. So I guess.
Yes, Mr. Moody. So the current analysis shows that this generator, and before that, I checked with our operations staff, and it turns out Novik is the supplier of power to the plant, and it's very stable. So I was kind of surprised to learn that in the last 6 years that we've been operating this plant, we have never had a single outage. So Novik is pretty stable apparently here. But yes, the analysis shows that this current generator is capable of sustaining 50%, about 10 MGD. But also want to mention, like when we upsize the pump, the need for backup is not like twice what it is now, right? So again, Jessica, I think we have an analysis going on to find out what percentage sustaining capacity would be.
In theory, the calculations show that we can support 10 MGD, but we think we can probably squeeze out a little bit more than 10 with one generator. So with the second generator, that'll get us over 20 MGD.
Yeah, so addition of second generator would increase that percentage sustaining capacity. It'll be more than 50%.
Okay, and then you mentioned supporting future expansion. Sense of what the capacity is needed for the supporting future expansion?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we want at minimum 50% of the generators to be able to support at minimum 50%. So if we do not increase at this backup second generator, then we won't be able to even have that 50% backup capacity, right? So just to support that future expansion, we definitely need this second generator in place.
I see. I thank you for the clarity on when you were using the term future expansion. I wasn't sure what that meant, but thank you.
I'm just amazed that they kept the price from 3 years ago. They were still able to build it for the original price with the way things escalate.
Cummins, you talking about the generator or?
Yeah, the generator I'm talking about.
Yeah, so I have had recent discussions with them, and they did the prices. If we had not locked it like last year when we ordered it, it's gone up like almost 30%. I mean, the prices of this generator, it was good that we locked in that price last year. It has definitely gone up if we were to purchase it today.
What's the fuel source for the generators?
Diesel.
Diesel?
Yeah. Good to go to the next slide, Mr. Chairman.
do we have above ground or underground storage tanks in the?
Above ground, outside the building. So when we got a firm delivery schedule from Cummins, which they said is in around last week of May, back in October, we advertised this project. Unfortunately, on the first round of the bids, we did not get a single bidder. So after some internal discussion, we decided to rebid the project. However, this time though, we we had a pretty robust outreach effort with the contractors. We reached out to 6, 7 different contractors who either were currently working with us at the time, or they had worked with Loud and Water recently, and we were confident of their ability to do the work like this, right? So we reached out to 6, 7 different contractors, encouraged them to participate in the bid. However, like 4 of them indicated that just consideration of risk, reward, their resource availability and stuff, they said they made a business decision to not participate in the bid. 2 contractors indicated that they were pursuing the project. But when the bids opened on March 5th, 2025, we only received 1 bid from Hammerhead Construction of Virginia, and their bid amount was $1.35 million. As you can see it here, CDM Smith is our design engineer, and their estimate was $900,000. For this class of AACE estimate, its industry acceptable range is -10% to 15%. And what that equates to is the range of $810,000 to $1.035 million. It's pretty apparent there with these numbers. The bid that we got was about 50% more than our engineer's estimate. So what we did is immediately after the bids were opened, we reached out to Hammerhead, asked for as much supporting document backups, itemization of their, just to see like how they came up with this bid price, right? And Hammerhead did a good job. It was pretty apparent like they just didn't throw the numbers. They had some good backup documents. So we asked for their estimate, their bid, their like computations. We asked for their subs. On this project, because we were integrating new product into an existing system, right? So generator and also the fuel system, we specified that they were to use Cummins and Vital Fuel systems for integration purposes. And and some of the higher cost was attributed to the proposal they received from these specified subs. We had a couple of rounds of meetings with Cummins, Vital Fuel system, just to understand like how they came up with these numbers. After a round, and it was quite apparent that the fact that this wasn't going to be competitive bidding was known based on the public information that we did not get any bids on the first round. And even on the second round, we had a mandatory site visit and only like 2 contractors showed up. So it was kind of known to the contracting community that this wasn't going to be a very competitive project. And it was also that Hammerhead decided to use Vital Fuel system for the entire fuel work, which was a little different than our engineer's estimate. And I also want to add that our engineer's estimate, and this is industry standard, is they do make an assumption that the bids would be competitive and at minimum 3 contractors would compete, which was not the case in this particular project, right? So based on all these discussions we had with the contractor, feedback from our consultants, and then we also looked at what are the alternative path forward for us, right? We considered like, does it make any difference going for the 3rd round of bids? But we kind of concluded that the likely outcome wouldn't be much different than what we saw in the last 2 rounds. We considered if it made sense for us to split the project into different trades, maybe mechanical, electrical, and fuel, and bid it separately. But internally, we agreed that it would likely result in actually even higher combined bid. And obviously, the last option would have been to just not move forward with the project. And even that was not an option because we had already ordered this generator and Cummins was going to, they're going to deliver this on end of May, and it would only kill our warranty if we do not have contractor lined up by the time, right? So
do we know why there was so little interest? We talked about that the other day. Why there was so little interest? Is there a problem with our documents? Is it the market? Why so little interest?
And I know Kendra had mentioned this in the past too. Commercial electrical just seems to be that one trade right now, very difficult. And this particular project, it's not a big dollar amount, and then the amount of coordination where it is located in a critical facility. And I'm just quoting some of these contractors, right? when they look at the risk reward and then the resource, they just they did not see this as an attractive project to go after. So it was more like a business decision they made not to pursue.
So you don't think it's the market, you think it's the type of project that's why you don't have that much interest?
Yeah, kind of combination of both. So the market condition is commercial electrical, just very tight right now. I mean, we have another small need at the Beaver Dam site, some lightning upgrades. We reached out to like 8, 9 different electrical. They are not even like interested to come out and listen to us like what the issue is. So it's just the market right now on electrical is really tight. I mean, lack of.
And I can't get an electrician to do anything in my house.
I think that a lot of them are doing data center work. It's profitable and it's plentiful.
That's a
and-
good
Yes.
point, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to mention, a couple of years ago, I think it's even starting to pull in the medium-size contractors. We had upgraded and added a generator next door here at the O&M building several years ago, and a really good company, Monocacy Valley, we worked with, and we had great success with their, I believe they've even been sucked into this marketplace, and they're too busy to want to, come and do a job of this size. So, certainly it's a
It's
competitive.
troubling when there's no interest. It makes you wonder, is it the market? Is it our documents that are causing problems? As far as I know, we have a
Yeah.
good reputation out in the industry.
Mr. Moody has a question.
Yeah, along those same lines, it sounds like there were certain risks that were perceived by the vendors. Abu, you mentioned integration. Did you get any intel on some other risks that were perceived by the vendors that they felt that this was probably not a good opportunity to pursue?
So Mr. Moody, as I indicated, integration in particular, we did specify just to make sure things go smoothly. We required that they use vendors who installed the original construction, right? So Vital Fuel System was the original integrator for a fuel system, and Cummins was the original integrator for the generator. So it only made sense to use the same the proprietary softwares and products they have. It made sense to use them, and that's why we specified, we kind of sole sourced integration on this project.
So that limited the competition
On
tremendously.
the integration side, yes. I mean,
Do you
yeah,
think- do you
because
think
we
that
did
may-
specify. But our consultant, I mean, we're pretty certain, like if they are to bring another company which has no prior knowledge of this system, I mean, you can reasonably think like it would actually take more effort for them to understand the existing system and then take on the new work, right? So that was the driver on why we sole sourced integration side of things.
Okay. Do you get a sense of any other risks that were perceived by the bidders that they were concerned about? Anything was voiced, or in particular with Hammerhead, in terms of driving up their costs? Did they present any potential risks that they could see?
So when I mentioned risk with Hammerhead, so we did ask them, so our design, our bid documents did not require them to use Vital Fuel System for the entire fuel work, right? It was only the system integration part is where we required. Our estimates were built with assumption that they can use a general contractor to do the rest of the plumbing, like fuel piping and stuff like that. But that's where Hammerhead said they see a risk in using a general contractor, plumbing contractor for all the piping work, and then Vital for system integration. And they made, based on that, the risk that they perceived, they made a decision to ask Vital Fuel System to provide pretty much all fuel work, which was
Okay.
not required by the design documents, the bid documents, but that's just a decision they made.
Okay.
And
Thank
at
you.
this point of procurement, there is limitation on what we can ask the contractor can do or what we can ask the bidder to do, right? So there are some procurement limitations on our side.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so after all this, I know this has already been a long explanation here, but after all this discussion with Hammerhead, we were able to negotiate some, not as much as we wanted, but we were able to negotiate the bid price down by about 48,000. And in the end, after internal discussion, we determined that when you look at the need for this second generator, it was in the best interest of Loudon Water to proceed with this bid. And Yeah, if there is no more question, I can go to the next slide. Okay. So schedule, the project we anticipate, it's about a year, final completion in about a year is what we expect. We're tracking this project in our 10-year CIP under project PWS 00017. The budget we allocated for this project is $2 million. But as you can see there, the price of the generator is about $900,000. The bids, as I just said, is about $1.35 million. And the CA services fee, which is my next presentation. So combined, we are at about $2.5 million, which is $500,000 more than what we planned. So what we are planning to do is there are a couple other projects, one being a sewer replacement project in Sterling, and the other one is manhole replacement project in South Riding area. The schedule on that project has slightly delayed, and we know we will not be spending what was planned for 2025. So we intend to reallocate some of the about $500,000 from those two projects to this project. So there is no net impact to our annual CIP budget. Yeah, and I also want to add, Google is our neighbor at the site, and a couple years ago, as part of their and there was some easement relocation agreement with Google, and they agreed to reimburse Loudon Water $700,000, which we rolled into this project. So I just wanted to point that out too. And Mr. Chairman, I think this is my last slide before the motion. So if there is no more question, I have the motion in front of you. And I also want to point out Trap Rock, obviously actively operating facility, and then these different trades. It's reasonable to expect like more questions from the contractor and potential issues. So we are requesting 10% contingency on construction for this project.
Please expand on the Google $700,000. What does that mean?
I can take that one.
Is that part of the 2.5 or is that?
So within the CIP sheet for this project,
Yeah.
we have, 1.3 million of Loudon Water funds and 700,000
Okay.
of the reimbursement we will receive from Google. We are eligible to request the payment from Google upon authorization of this contract. So the agreement reads that once we've issued the contract, they'll reimburse us. We do not have to wait for the contract to complete and all of our payouts to occur. And, really in short, when Google set forward to expand their data center to the north of us, that was our primary access into the plant and our primary utility feeds for gas and power. And, they wanted us to abandon our access and relocate it, as well as relocate those easements. And it got into a negotiation for us. We felt like the utility easements could remain, but that would create a bigger risk for us because it's so difficult to get people inside of these fenced facilities. So if one of those lines were severed, it would be quite a difficulty. So where we landed, it became quite an expense and a logistical thing for them to relocate the main utility feeds. And, as an alternative, they said, well, we would help you support increasing the reliability of your backup power generation. And so the 700 was sort of derived as a sort of split of the cost back then several years ago. Obviously, costs have grown a bit today.
And that was a flat fee, no escalation,
No.
Question. I'll read the recommended motion.
Can we stop for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you need, does my vote count on this matter? In other words, do we need to have a physical quorum?
These are recommendations. He's recommending.
Yeah,
Okay, so then it would have to be an
Yeah.
action item. Go ahead.
yeah,
John.
this is John Wilburn. If you don't mind, can we move this to an action item for the next board meeting?
Oh, that's okay with me.
Okay.
Okay. I move the recommendation to the board to award the construction contract for the Trap Rock Water Treatment Facility Standby Generator Project to Hammerhead Construction of Virginia Incorporated for $1,302,500 $589 with an approximate 10% contingency to be controlled by the general manager for a total authorized budget of $1,433,000. Additional costs will require board approval, and I move that this be put on the action agenda for the board. Can I, all in favor?
Need a second.
I'll second it.
favor?
This is Jim.
Say aye.
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 Okay, that passed. Next item, approval of the construction phase services task order for this project.
Mr. Chairman, I am here to seek your approval of task order for construction administrative services for the Trap Rock Water Treatment Facility standby generator project. This is a companion request with the presentation that I just made. So if you're okay, I'm going to skip past first few slides, which is duplicate of the previous slide. Location, background, scope of work, schedule. And I want to start with why we need CA services. So on our construction projects, Loudon Water, we provide in-house construction management and inspection. However, to successfully execute the project, we need assistance from our design consultants so they provide multiple different support to Loudon Water during the execution of construction. When needed, they provide consultants provide specialty inspection and testing services. They review submittals, make sure they ensure quality and contract compliance, help us ensure quality and contract compliance. Because they are the engineers, design engineer of record, we're able to leverage their expertise with the facility in this case, and any questions that may arise during the construction. So all this combined helps Loudon Water reduce liability and exposure of risk to things like potential claims, and monitor poor contractor performance. So these are kind of reasons why we obtain consultants support during construction. And here I have like list of scope that we typically get from the consultants. And I've kind of grouped them into two different categories: construction phase and operational support. Construction phase support like sub-drawings review, testing, administrative submittal review, claims review, things like that. So these are work that kind of gets the infrastructure built. So these are support we need to get the infrastructure built. And once they are built, the next set of services here, operational support, basically like startup and testing, and making sure things are working in order so that Loudon Water can accept these facilities for long-term operation. So these are generally multidisciplinary effort here, services that we get from the consultants.
I have one question. What is go back, what is inundation mapping?
Oops, sorry. So it doesn't apply to this particular project because there is no floodplain involved. But if it was a project where you,
Just wondering.
yeah, okay. So my understanding is so when you begin the design, you have an understanding of what is the anticipated inundation in the site, right? So post-construction, you have to do like, if you have any additional fill on the floodplain, are you increasing inundation on your property compared to what it was planned? So it's more like conforming post-construction inundation, how it compares with what was planned. So just basically making sure the site grading complies with what the original plan was. So it's not needed in this particular project because we're
I
not.
was just curious.
Yeah.
Who is conducting the safety inspections?
Contractor is responsible
Provide a
entirely
safety
to
plan
provide safety plan. Yes.
and the full-time inspections.
So resident inspection for the work is us, but inspection of safety, that's on the contractor.
Thank you.
So here I have, so this is CDM, like I said, CDM Smith is the design consultant for the project, and we're using them for construction phase services too. We negotiated fees with them, and here I have, this is high-level breakdown for the purpose of this presentation here, but the actual spreadsheet we use goes into much granular detail. And there are a bunch of assumptions that go into this. Just as an example, like CDM came up with 70 submittals to be reviewed on this project. We made an assumption that about half of them would require review, second round of review. We made like an assumption roughly 30 RFIs on this project. So bunch of assumptions goes into building this fee. And I also want to point out the last item there, power system study. Typically, if it was a new construction, that's something the contractor would do and we review. But because of this project where it is, it's an so the contractor is not doing any work on the rest of the plant. It only made sense for CDM to do that power system study because they're familiar with the entire facility. So we decided like they're the best ones suited to do the power system study for the entire facility upon installation of this generator. So that kind of increased which typically would not be CA services, but we made a decision to include that as CA services on this project. So overall, this is where we landed, and this is about 10.24% of the overall construction cost, including the cost of a generator. And that, so our experience has been for a minor upgrade like this, we're generally in the range of 10 to 16% for CA services. This one happens to be about 10.24%, and we felt comfortable moving forward with this proposal, this negotiated fee here. And I'll take a pause for any questions.
Yes, what is the noise?
Yeah, so see, so all of our BOA consultants, they are required. So all these task orders are not to exceed fixed fee, time and material, not to exceed fixed fee contract. And on a monthly basis, when we review their invoice and during execution, our PMs, they pay very close attention just to make sure like hours are in line with the actual incurred effort. So that's where we track the effort. And yes, to answer your question, it is time and material contract.
And when we build these fees using our spreadsheet template, we're building in assumptions for quantities for each of these line items and more. You know, this is a summarized level of detail.
And then we do try to, like, say for submittals, right? We try to make them do it as a package rather than scattered submittal here and there. So we do what we can to minimize the effort. Yeah. So this is the same sheet. So if any questions, I can take it. I mean, we pretty much the duplicate sheet I had on the other presentation. If no questions, I have the motion in front of you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm assuming that if the previous item goes on action item, that this has to go on action item too. So, although by itself, it wouldn't require going on action.
I think that could be on consent.
What's that?
I think that could be on consent, separate.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
I
so
wasn't sure
too. There's
what-
just there's just one issue I wanted to look at on the prior item. I don't think it applies to this one.
Okay. I'll make the motion. I move the recommendation to the board to award a task order for construction administration services for the Trap Rock Water Treatment Facility standby generator project to CDM Smith for $222,300 with an approximate 5% contingency to be controlled by the general manager for a total authorized budget of $233,400. Additional costs will require board approval. Can I get a second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, that passes. Thank you. Okay, the next item is approval. Oh, you, again, you're
I have one more.
approval of design services task order, community,
Yeah. You see, on the side.
approval of design services task order, community systems radio to fiber migration.
Mr. Chairman, I'm here to seek your approval on the design task order for community systems radio to fiber migration project. So the location, the exhibit in the middle is kind of representative of Loudon Water's service area. This project deals with community systems. And in specific, this project will involve work in Selma Water Community Systems and Rokeby Water Community Systems. Okay. So both community water systems, they rely on groundwater well to supply water to the community. Selma water system has 4 production wells, which you can see with these little red dots here. So these are production wells for Selma. And then there are 3 production wells on the Rokeby water system. The water treatment plants, by now, we've already extended a fiber optic cable to the treatment plant. However, communication between the wells and the treatment plant, we still rely on spread spectrum radio technology, which by now is kind of outdated, obsolete. So, so not only on these 2 sites, Loudon Water is in the process of modernizing our communication infrastructure. And what that means in this case is migrating from radio technology to fiber optic cables. Then that modernization helps us increase reliability and data security, as well as increase our operational capabilities. We undertook a similar project back in 2018 and migrated Beacon Hill water system from radio to fiber. And the results kind of prove that it does increase reliability and our operational capabilities. So with this project here, we're trying to do the same. Between the 2 communities, this will need approximately 32,000 6 miles of PVC conduit and fiber optic cable. No work is needed in the building itself because those upgrades have already taken place when the treatment plants went fiber optic. So this is strictly a linear project that installs about 6 miles of conduit that would run generally parallel to the water mains. A majority of this will be installed by directional drill. We will have to cross Siklin Creek at one of the site. So relatively straightforward project here. And when you look at the consultant, the task for the consultant, a typical linear project that will involve project management, design services, which includes topographic survey, some deed research, wetland determination, utility locating, geotechnical, and in the end, preparation of bid documents, and also cost estimating. And on the permitting side, we will need quite a few wetland delineation and permitting, typical county permits associated with a project like this, VSMP permit and VDOT permits. And we are also securing bid phase services with this task order, basically responding to any questions we get from the bidders and preparation of conformed documents. We selected J2 engineers for the project. J2 is one of our BOA civil consultant. And in addition, currently they're also working on a fiber optic project in Fredericksburg, a larger project, actually larger than what our need here is. So they will be able to tap into experience from that ongoing project they have in Fredericksburg. J2, so like with other task order, what I have here for you is a very high level breakdown of the fee that we found reasonable and acceptable. But when the way we come to this is a lot more granular. It's a bottom up approach where we're looking at every task, the labor staff they're using. So all in all, we found this to be a reasonable fee for the project. J2 is proposing using a couple different subs for the task. McKinsey Snyder for aerial survey and a photogrammetric survey, ECS for geotechnical, Mid-Atlantic Utility Locating for subsurface utility location, and TNT Environmental for environmental work on the project. So overall, the fee of $167,500 is, we found it reasonable to move forward. And I'll take a pause if any of you have
I assume
questions.
this is in existing easements?
Yes,
And the 4, is this going to be in Raspberry Falls as well?
not with this one. This is Selma.
Selma?
Yeah.
They're connected, the water systems are connected, right? So is one of the pumps in Raspberry?
Andy, I can take your help.
Yeah, I can answer that question, Mr. Chairman. So I'm Andy Kraft. I'm the Director of OT.
Okay.
So the Raspberry community, the Raspberry water system was connected to Selma. I forget the exact year, but it is connected via fiber right now.
Okay.
So the two communities are governed from a production standpoint from the Selma treatment plant.
So there'll be no digging, essentially,
Correct.
conduit put in the ground in Raspberry.
Correct. The fiber work is really between the Selma water plant and the 4 wells
Okay.
that are in Selma.
And then, the project happened in Beacon Hill, which I'm a resident of, it was fine. The only question I have is the concrete vaults or whatever are at the ground are quite large. Are they gonna be the same ones that are gonna be put in Selma? And I don't know if you know the answer to that question.
Those are the handholds for the
Yeah.
fiber that we put every roughly 500 feet.
Yeah,
They will be,
Have they
I'm
got-
sure we'll get a recommendation for what they're supposed to be. We typically use the quartzite boxes because they're very rugged. But certainly, we'll work with the engineer to make sure that we get the recommended.
I mean, the feedback I got when that project happened in Beacon was that why do they have to be so large? So I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't know whether technology's changed and they can get smaller than they are, but I mean, they are big.
We went through an exercise last year, and we now actually have a standard specification, and we picked an approved material. We can share that with you. It's not one of these larger concrete vaults. It's a smaller smaller handhole that we approved.
It's not a big deal. I just was wondering, just curious.
You anticipate all of it being just open cut or?
No, majority of it would be directional drill.
Mr. Moody has a question.
Yeah, just from my understanding, so currently the communication is entirely radio based or? and we're moving
Between
to a
the
fiber-
monitor, Mr. Modi, between the production well and the treatment plant is radio, but from the plant to our central control, that's fiber. That's already in place.
Okay. So I guess when you're talking about running out to, are we anticipating any retrofitting or any new devices? Because now we're talking about integration with fiber through our devices. Are there going to be new additional replacement costs at all that has been factored in, or is it? I'm just trying to understand from a technical perspective.
No,
Because now
Mr.
we're-
Moody. So when we converted the treatment plants to fiber, the upgrades needed to accept fiber is already in place. So
Okay.
once
okay.
the contractor extends fiber optic cable, our in-house staff would be able to just make that switch over to fiber optic.
Understood.
So there is
All
no
right.
need for any work inside the facility.
All right, thank you.
So schedule for the project, design and permitting, 15 months, primarily driven by environmental permitting on this project. And then about 4 or 5 months for bid phase, and we anticipate construction to be in the range of 15 to 18 months. So the goal is to be completed by middle of 2028. CIP, this project, we're tracking this project under COM 83. And the 10-year CIP budget for the project is 2.97. Still anticipate to be within that projected budget for the Mr. Chairman, this is my last slide, so I'll take a pause if any questions before the motion. I have the motion in front of you.
I'll read this one also. I move the recommendation to the board to award a design task order for the community systems radio to fiber migration project to J2 Engineers for $167,500 with an approximate 5% contingency to be controlled by the general manager for a total authorized budget of $176,000. Additional costs will require board approval. Can I get a second?
Second.
Let's vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye, aye.
That passes. You have the last one too.
And one more, yeah.
Don't you have anybody else? Go ahead. What's that? I would say consent. I'm just teasing you. Go ahead. Approval, the next one is approval of design task order, JLMA East Sewer Pumping Station and Force Main Phase 2. I won't say who's presenting.
Mr. Chairman, I'm here to seek your approval on the design task order for JLMA East Sanitary Pump Station Force Main Project. The project is if you recall, a couple of months ago, our planning group made a presentation to the committee and the board regarding all the infrastructure needs that we had to undertake when the JLMA East and West were added to our service area. And this project here deals with the sewer flow on the JLMA East side of that newly added service area. The project itself is about 2 miles south of Route 7 along Belmont Ridge Road. I want to give you a little bit of background of what's happening, a bunch of different things happening in the JLMA area. So more focused on this area here. We currently have this 5 MGD pump station in construction, Russell Branch pump station. The developer will install the developer will install this force main for us, and the developers would also install the gravity sewer here. At the same time, we have another pump station project, Goose Creek Interim Pump Station, that's currently in construction, scheduled to be completed before the end of the year. A little bit of background on Goose Creek Interim Pump Station. So that was a project we initiated before the JLMA days, right? So primarily driven by, we have a lagoon-based wastewater treatment plant at the site to serve the industrial park. And to be in compliance with DEQ's new ammonia regulations, we proposed to DEQ to decommission the lagoons and then take that flow to the nearest pump station, ultimately to be treated at the treatment plant. So we committed to DEQ to get this project up and running by the end of 2025. So that interim pump station is driven by the regulation, the commitment we made to DEQ. And the nearest pump station at the time, it was North Lower Seclin Pump Station, which is at the Trap Rock site. So that's why we've been referring to this as interim pump station. Is the ultimate goal is to divert this flow towards Russell Branch Pump Station, and then bring it back to the plant. But we had to make this temporary provision to take it to North Lower Seclin. What this project here I have in front of you would do is it would basically divert that flow, and we will be providing this permanent configuration where the flow from GCIP would be routed to Russell Branch. So that's always been our long-term plan. And the other benefit of doing this now is JLMA East, while the landmass got added to our system, there is still some uncertainty about what kind of development would come along, what is our ultimate projected flow. So this gives us some more time to refine the flow projections, as well as the force main that currently, the interim force main that goes to the North Lower Seclin, it's about 2 miles. So the much shorter pipe here and more favorable topography would result in added slight increase in the capacity of GCIP, which again gives us more time to refine that ultimate flow, projected flow from JLMA East. So the project itself is, again, a relatively straightforward project. It is about 2,900 feet of force main from the Goose Creek interim pump station site to the manhole east of Goose Creek. And from that point forward, the developers, so 2 developers would be involved here. They will basically install the gravity sewer to take it all the way to Russell Branch pump station. So this project will include hydraulic modeling for the force main. And we want to keep the interim force main. It just provides that one more in case of emergency need or maintenance. We still have, so to make sure we still have that force main available, the consultant will provide arrangements that allows our operators to switch the flow between the 2 force mains if needed, right? So, and then design and permitting associated with this new almost 3,000 feet of force main. And because there are developers working right and left at this site, there will be developer coordination that will be needed as part of this project.
You probably said it and I missed it, but the flow from Russell Branch, where does that go to?
So, and I may have missed to mention this to you. So currently existing, if you go out there, we have a small pump station here. We refer to this as Belmont Tree's interim pump station, which was built by a developer to primarily serve the nearby development, right? So when our flow, when our need increased, we made a decision to install a brand new pump station. And so upon completion of Russell Branch pump station, this small pump station will be decommissioned, and then all of the flow would be routed to the new pump station and then pumped back to the same direction. Let me go. Yeah, if you can. So upon completion of Russell Branch, all of printer is not working. So yeah, upon completion of Russell Branch, the force mains would kind of come back and tie into the existing force main. And we will also have another brand new force main running all the way to gravity sewer. So there will be twin pipes coming out of Russell Branch headed towards gravity sewer over here.
To, because it seems like we're going from one side of the stream to the other and then going by gravity.
You talk,
And whether there's an opportunity to just do an old gravity system on the west side of,
you're talking this segment here?
no, from
The
pump
force
station
main.
to pump station.
From,
It is headed downstream in the north direction. So has that been studied?
yeah, Hazen looked at multiple different options, and although I wasn't involved, I'm pretty sure they determined this to be the most efficient path.
Because we're already obtaining easements for, so easements shouldn't be the,
Yeah, I would suspect, and I haven't seen it, but I would suspect that the Russell Branch is driving the alignment and we have to get under Goose Creek. So I don't think that we could get under Goose Creek and meet the elevation at Russell Branch, right? For the to make that, you're talking about just the force main piece right now, right? Whether that could be
Correct.
gravity. Yeah, we have to get under Goose Creek. And I don't think we could get that gravity all the way down to Russell
like,
Branch.
did you get under Goose Creek at any point in that?
Oh, further up, you mean?
And
What you do not see on this exhibit, and I did not put any water component to it here, is there is 24-inch water line that we need. And all this easement was negotiated as bulk, right? So I did not include water main in this project. So it, I guess, made more sense to get just a little bit wider easement and do the force main. But I'm sure Hazen, as part of their planning, looked at multiple different options. Darren is not here, but
there have been a fair amount of sort of iterations of looking at scenarios. I think yours is an important one. But I know Hazen has weighed a lot of different scenarios, and we continue to, as things evolve, not specific to this project in this area, but even in the JLMA West, every month, every few months, things are evolving, and we're having to take a fresh look at the assumptions in the planning. And
But if there is a way to find out if there is a feasible point where it could connect by gravity, then we would avoid a lot of O&M over time.
Absolutely.
We're running on the other side of the Goose?
Possibly,
Crossing right by the.
possibly if there is an opportunity to cross somewhere in that mile and a half.
I suppose another factor, again, lots of factors into the final decision for this, but on the east side, we have these active developments where the easement acquisition has been relatively easy in comparison with what may be the case on the west side. To your point, I think as an example project down on the airport a few years ago with the Western Lands, there was a big push to run a force main, a very long force main and a pump station across the airport. And we pushed back very hard in that case to make sure that that would be gravity for the long-term implications on O&M costs.
I'm just
Absolutely.
hypothesizing that a half a mile long force main probably is more than a mile and a quarter of gravity sewer over the long term. If it's feasible. If it's not feasible, it's not feasible.
This slide here, again, a typical, and this is a linear project, and these are tasks typical to a linear project. Project management, design phase services, which again includes survey, wetland delineations, utility locating, geotechnical, in this task, hydraulic modeling, and finally preparing bid documents and cost estimating. There will be, we're crossing Goose Creek, so there will be a lot of permitting needs on this project, and we're also securing bid phase services with this task order. We selected Dewberry consultant, Dewberry engineers for the design phase of this project. Dewberry is also our BOA civil consultant, and they are the design engineers of record for the Goose Creek interim pump station, pretty familiar with the site and our needs here. And once again, this fee breakdown here is a high-level breakdown for the purpose of this presentation. We build this fee from bottom up. After some negotiations, we find the fee of $192,300 reasonable for the effort here. And Dewberry is proposing to use ECS for geotechnical borings, geotechnical analysis, and Mid-Atlantic Utility for utility designation. Take a pause here for any questions. Schedule, design and permitting, about 12 months. Bid phase services, 3 to 4 months. And then construction, it shouldn't take 15 months, but just because there is this developer coordination and other things associated, we want to be on the safe side. So we're projecting about 15 months for construction, which puts us end of 28. Russell Branch Pump Station is anticipated to come along by mid-2027. So it kind of matches that timeline too. So this is the schedule. And then the last slide here I have before the motion is CIP. We're tracking this project under West 68, a budget of $3.42 million. And we still anticipate it to be within that range. Mr. Chairman, this is my last slide before the motion. So if any questions. Not, I have the motion in front of you.
I'm thinking of putting this on the consent unless somebody has a different idea. No? Okay, I'll make the motion. I move the recommendation to the board to award a design task order for the JLMA East Sanitary Pump Station Force Main project to Dewberry for $192,300 with an approximate 5% contingency to be controlled by the general manager for a total authorized budget of $202,000. Additional costs will require board approval, and the recommendation is to put it under the consent. Do I get a second? No second?
I'll second
Mr.
it. This is Jim.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Mr. Wilburn, if he's on the line. My employer uses Dewberry quite a bit. I'm a former employee of Dewberry. I don't know if I should be abstaining from this vote.
No, I don't think that would require you to abstain from the vote. You say that your lawyer uses Dewberry. I use Dewberry. They're just they're a first-class organization. I don't think that causes any problem. And as a former employee, that doesn't either. I don't have any concerns about you voting based on those facts.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I didn't hear that. Oh. Okay, call for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Very good job.
Yes.
You did a good job carrying all these. The next item is the construction contract contingency review.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Rick Zafel, and Sam and I are here today to provide this brief informational item to review construction contract contingencies and to offer or propose some guidelines for setting those in the future. And so this presentation is, in some respects, is being given kind of in follow-up to the discussion at the February CIP meeting, where we evaluated the increase of contingency for the Lansdowne pump station. And when we...
Just interrupt you, for clarification, what we talked about was the need to come back a second time to increase contingencies. Maybe we should be more flexible on the contingencies that
Yeah.
we have to avoid a second trip to the vote.
Right, and hopefully, maybe there'll be some, progress on that front here with this presentation. That's certainly our intent. And so when we looked back at historical construction contract contingency data for this presentation, and we looked over an 11-year period. So from 2013 to 2024, we had about 76 total projects that were awarded a construction contract. And of course, each of those was assigned or given a authorized construction contract contingency by the board. And so when we looked at the data, we kind of broke the time period into two groups here. So from 2013 to 2018, sort of the first 5 years of this evaluation, there were 49 capital projects that were awarded in that time frame, and they were largely given a 10% project contingency by the board. So that pie chart there on the left kind of illustrates that. And for the exceptions where we had either a 5 or a 15% contingency given to some of the other projects, we feel like those decisions were thoughtful. They were made on a case-by-case basis, and most of those authorizations below the 10% were for new facilities, for greenfield projects, kind of brand new sites, brand new facilities. And then there was a rare case of a extenuating circumstance as well for other deviations from that 10%. But typically it was 10% from 2013 to 2018. Okay. And then moving forward in time from 2019 to 2024, kind of the second half of our analysis period here, there were 27 projects that were awarded a construction contract in that time frame. And in that particular time period, the typical contingency was 5%. Most of the projects were given a 5% contingency or authorized by the board. And again, we feel like these decisions were thoughtful, made on a case-by-case basis, and certainly the deviations from that 5% were case-by-case as well. And those particular projects that got a 10% or higher during this time frame, they were mostly rehab or upgrade projects where we were modifying an existing facility, but we had to keep the facility in operation throughout construction. And or we did have one case of a greenfield project with a bit of complexity or uncertainty associated with it that justified the higher contingency there as well. But this is kind of the breakdown of the two different time periods in our 11-year window that we saw, and sort of the summary data of the different board authorized contingencies. And I'm going to hand it over to Sam now. He's going to present a slide that kind of shows the full picture of this in a little bit more detail. So I'll let him.
Thanks, Rick. Good morning again. So busy slide, but I would propose that we maybe focus on the overall trends here. We can't really see the colors too well on this projection, but the darker blue color here represents the authorized contingency, and the orange just off to the side of each project here along the bottom the horizontal axis is the used contingency. And by looking at this trend of 76 projects across the last 11 years, like Rick mentioned, the first thing that sort of jumps up is that sort of division line around 2019, when you see that the typical contingency that was requested of 10% sort of tends to trend more like a 5% contingency, and we do have those sort of exceptions where we requested 10 by looking at circumstances on a case-by-case basis. But the very first sort of thought here is that, by and large, there is a fairly good track record. Only 4 projects of the 76 really exceeded that allocated contingency that was authorized by the board. And you see those here in the cases where the orange line sort of exceeds or overtakes the adjacent blue line there. You see the 4 instances right there. So this represents about a 95% success rate in really right-sizing that contingency for each project and its associated sort of set of circumstances and factors. The other thing I'll highlight here is that this is not showing or incorporating any filter into the data. So one of the things that we tried to look for when we were evaluating all this data was, is there really a very sort of discrete and predictable set of circumstances that sort of allows us to predict what type of contingency use we'll see for each project? And the reality is, in filtering these projects between new infrastructure versus rehab or upgrades, or linear versus facility, no matter how we cut it, we couldn't really see an emerging trend that we could use to set or design a set of guidelines for ourselves to just really sort of pigeonhole or allow us to very easily sort of set a contingency for each case. And what begins to emerge as we start looking at individual cases and all the projects is that we deal with complex sets of circumstances. Every project has that, perhaps 1 or 2 things about it that really sort of drive whether there's a lot of uncertainty or potential for risk that would drive these actual sort of change order costs to exceed the allocated contingency. And so what we found, and we'll get into it in the next slide here, is that it goes beyond the type of project or the intent of each project, and more to like 5 or 6 categories of circumstance that seem to sort of be more recurring in the cases where we have needed more than 5 or 10 or whatever the allocated amount is. So just in the overall, right, only 12 of 76 projects have required over 5% contingency to complete. Only 2 of the 76 have required over 10. The high success rate and these sort of overall statistics tell us that, again, we have been judicious and thoughtful in how we have set these contingencies for projects. And it's not as simple as just, setting 10% across the board for everything, because it's really not always, what you need. So I'll take a pause there and see if there's any sort of questions from the committee here.
I can't read it. I'm just curious in the 2019 to 24, I can't read what projects were like the one that sucked their 14%. What project was that?
This is the Guilford station. Savita, you have a closer view, maybe.
Yeah, the Guilford Station. Water main relocation. Yeah.
So I actually looked at these specific cases where we allocated over 10. They stood out to us as well. And I spoke to the project manager, Kathleen Witten, about that project. And again, it was a very high degree of uncertainty due to there was some subsurface risks, some record drawing issues. There's a lot of fear or apprehension about whether the design that we had for that project would actually be constructible. But in reality, at the end of the day, if you see there's no orange bar right next to it, they got through it with no need to use contingency at all. So that's just an example of, that sort of risk not really materializing.
What,
Mr. Allen?
yeah, what changed? Why did we go from a 10% assumption all of a sudden to a 5% assumption?
I can offer, we had some leadership change in that era. We had a new general manager. We had, I believe, a new chair of our CIP committee. Those are two items we suspect may have influenced this, among maybe some others where we just tried to kind of tighten the belt a little bit.
And then where's the one where VDOT made us put all that pavement down? Is that?
So that would be, and I also can't read it quite.
East Maple.
But it's East Maple. It's one of these two, and by chronology, they are arranged by chronology. So it's this penultimate one here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a sort of a factor of an external, obviously an external entity sort of changing the rules of engagement on us there at the last minute of the project execution.
Thanks.
Okay, so to wrap up here, in our 10-plus year analysis of the projects, prior to 2019, so it was 78%, got the 10% contingency, and then beyond 2019, it was 78% again, that got the 5. So 3 out of 4 in each case were those respective contingency amounts. And as Sam pointed out, the 5 to 10% contingency was adequate for most projects, 95% success rate, with staying under the board authorized 5 to 10% through that 11-year time span. And so just some guidelines for future contingency requests here. And that would be in determining, a 5 versus a 10, a 5, for the second half of our analysis, and currently being kind of the baseline or the normal contingency amount here. So in situations where a 10% might be justified, we came up with kind of 6 criteria here. R&R projects are intrinsically more complex because you have to modify an existing facility while it stays in operation. So that could be a justification. We also have situations where we are modifying facilities that were built or last updated decades ago. And so the construction and or design standards on the prior construction of that facility are outdated. So that can add some complexity as well to current projects or current modifications. We also have situations where the record drawings are weak or poor or even non-existent. And again, that applies in many cases to those facilities that were built decades ago. Also, subsurface work or projects that are heavy on the subsurface modifications or facilities, those can be a little bit more complex as well. You might encounter some unforeseen conditions, underground that maybe weren't shown on a record drawing or weren't anticipated. And then kind of rounding out the list here, projects that are extensive in the electrical and INC disciplines, those can be a bit more complex. Those particular disciplines are usually developed later in the design cycle, and they also tend to be more complex. Perhaps a case in point is the generator project that we discussed at the beginning of the meeting. But those disciplines do add more complexity, especially projects that are heavier on those particular disciplines. And then I'll finish up here with smaller contract values. The smaller projects, they can't absorb a larger change, being smaller dollar with the smaller contingency. So for going forward, what we're proposing or suggesting to do is to justify any proposed contingency amounts that are greater than 5%. And maybe that would be a portion of a slide or a slide. And we would call out, some or perhaps most of those factors or those guidelines that are contributing to our request for anything higher than a 10%, than a 5% contingency.
I have one question. When you say linear projects, that That includes most pipeline projects, I assume is what you're talking.
Mostly, yes.
Right, but I think the emphasis there is on the subsurface component. Like if we look at the Lansdowne project, which is the last one we brought to the board for an increase in the contingency amount, it wasn't a linear project, but it was its linear subsurface component, right? Those existing conduits and conflicts that we found that we had to work around that sort of triggered a large majority of the increase that we saw that tipped us over the scale there, right? The limit. So it's more the subsurface part of that guideline than it is the linear part, because as we said, we looked at the linear projects just independently and couldn't really see an emerging trend of more contingency needed just for the sake of it being linear.
Yeah, and just adding to the linear projects, I would say that a linear project where we were digging up and replacing the existing pipe, that would be, more complex, more risky than just laying new greenfield pipe. So that, that's probably a better example of a linear project that might justify a little bit higher contingency.
I'm surprised during COVID days, when there was supply constraints and you couldn't get contractors, that we didn't see us blowing through our contingencies. When I looked at that graph, I didn't see that. So that was an interesting, footnote for looking at that. But then the other thing I thought of is maybe it's just because everyone padded their original quotes. So I don't know whether there's anything to that or not, or whether you want to comment on that. But still, at least we didn't go through the contingency. So that's positive.
I mean, bids were definitely higher during COVID, right? So I think we were seeing higher prices. That then we're still, even during COVID, we're still trying to manage overruns, right?
Yeah. Okay. That's great.
I guess it would also include projects that are affected by all these crazy tariffs that are going on.
Very well, yes.
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 Are we noticing reduced bid spread amounts? Current bids? For the top two?
Reduced bid spread or?
Yeah, from the winning bid to the second place bid.
I'd say we are
No.
seeing a little bit of that. We're
Impression.
starting to see higher pricing come in. We're starting to, even on the operating side, we're starting to see suppliers tell us they're adding surcharges, cost of materials. And so a lot of uncertainty headed forward, and we're going to try to mitigate that.
Do we have anything in our contract documents that allow a contractor to recoup added costs because of the tariffs?
No, I don't.
Our
We don't-
general
we don't have that,
conditions
yeah.
don't really have a specific condition that provides the right to a contractor to seek additional compensation just by virtue of an increase in price or escalation
Or market conditions, yeah.
or market it's sort of factored into every sort of supplier or supply impact is sort of on the contractor. So I guess what I would expect is that contractors facing that uncertainty would price in the risk at the time of bid.
Got desperate, he could probably come in for a change order anyway.
They can try.
They can ask. They can ask.
They gotta
The
go
only,
through us.
I would say the only place where we've seen that show up, Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, but on some of our very large plant projects where we've built in large equipment purchases, there have been provisions built in for a one-time increase, based on CPI and so forth.
Those the pre-selections that we do for the large equipment packages, yes, on those, but not on the classic, construction contracts.
I'm not suggesting you put it in, I'm just asking if.
Yeah.
I think phase two is a great example of that, Rick, where we bid that right at the beginning of COVID and the contractor did show up saying costs have escalated and we did not allow it, right? They had to eat that cost escalation because of the strength of our contract and we were successful in pushing back on that.
That is correct. Yeah. The bid price on that project was very timely in our favor. And the timing, yeah.
Are there any questions? I think this answers the question that we talked about the last meeting, and I think it's a very good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's That put a lot of effort into that analysis. I appreciate it. Okay, your capital construction quarterly report.
Here. So only one project highlight or snapshot this month for Goose Creek Industrial Park, SPS, and Force Main. Then we'll dive into the customary milestone and Broad Run expansion project reports, followed by the overall quarterly report on financials and schedule for the first quarter of 2025. And I'll start with GCIP, SPS, and Force Main. Amoya mentioned, how we were sort of relying on this project for some of that JLMA East development that we've seen. And I'm happy to report that we are on track to complete the work this year. As Amoya pointed out, that we were planning to. We have stayed under construction in spite of the fact that, the project has not been without challenges, including the fact that just off to the left of the picture here, that's our Milestone Reservoir construction site. So there is a common access that is shared between this facility and Milestone at this time. Eventually, Milestone will get its own access, but there was open excavation for the installation of sewer pipe and some other challenges, which you can imagine, when you're trying to get tunneling work done on Milestone and large pipe deliveries, it presented a little bit of a disruption there that we successfully worked through on both projects and really mitigated those impacts. So overall, very close here in terms of our value compared to our original contract value. We are getting into the initial steps of startup and commissioning now. Decommissioning of the existing lagoon facility. By now, these existing structures for the original treatment plant have been demolished, and we are making good progress towards completion around the summer, fall. Moving on to the Milestone Reservoir and Pump Station project, some good news to share here as well. Clark Construction is the CMAR for this project. We have completed the excavation and lining of tunnels A and C by the end of the first quarter of 2025. But as it stands today, we have also completed mining work on tunnel B. So even though it's presented as ongoing here for the purposes of the reporting time, we are now able to report that it's all complete. And now we're working on sort of that lining and cast and invert slab, cast in place invert slab for tunnel B. So most of the mining work that was maybe a little bit on the higher end of the risk profile has now been completed. We've also completed the initial site improvements and bridge foundations. Bridge construction is underway. We have now started the installation of the 42-inch raw water pipe, which you see on the picture here, and installation of miscellaneous utilities and other minor activities on the project as well. So that's a view of the sort of current status of the bridge at the end of the first period. Still the same change order total to report that we presented the last time we were here. Board authorized contingency for this one is 5%. And our percent spent versus time elapsed. We are seeing that divergence a little bit that we talked about, but the higher percent spent, it is driven by the sort of the faster than anticipated expensive tunneling work that we saw and we've seen during the execution of the project. So still ahead of schedule, still on track to complete by May of 2028. Not really much to get into here. 3 change orders executed, no delays really to speak of, and sort of the typical sort of data points for RFIs and submittals, just to demonstrate that things are lively, but we're on top of it. So here's where we were at the end of the first quarter, and now this final piece has been complete. We are working on sinking the shaft down to the bottom of the sump, which will represent the final stage of this major excavation work. And with that, I will pause and take any questions.
Okay, we'll continue on here with the broad run expansion to 15 MGD capacity. The numbers at the top here are largely the final project numbers for cost and change orders and revised contract value. We are getting very close to final completion. Of course, we achieved substantial completion right before Thanksgiving last year, and we are on track for final completion next month. And the number of work items required to get there is really dwindling down. We're at 10 or so items left here at the end of the first quarter. On the right there, I've just got my graphic just showing all the work areas finally complete, showing green there. And I'll just add that this will be the last slide in the main body of these quarterly updates for the Broad Run expansion project. It should be on the completed projects list at the next quarterly update. We anticipate it to be.
And no major impact on the plant through the whole.
The plant continued to operate, and as far as I know, meet permit, throughout the course of construction. So we'll move on then to our lists here, our tables. So we've got our active construction projects. There were 8 active in the first quarter of 2025. We've got our time statistics here on the left. And then on the right, we've got our cost or price, contract price information. Any questions on any of those projects? Okay. We'll move to our completed construction projects. So 2 of them reached final completion in the first quarter, and these will drop off the table here going forward. Any questions on these 2 projects? Okay, and then our look ahead here. So this is our 6-month look ahead for the projects that we anticipate to start construction in the next 2 quarters. And so we've got 6 projects that we are tracking to begin construction over the next 6 months or so.
Run gets a 3-month reprieve from
Little break,
recess for 3 months.
little break, and then we're back into it.
Wow.
I just have a question, colonial pipe replacement. That's not Colonial's pipe.
Those are street names.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's a street.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering, if Colonial Pipe, gas pipe.
Right, they're a big pipeline company, yeah.
I got called into a Colonial Pipe lawsuit when I was with Fairfax. That's why I'm very cognizant of the word colonial.
Okay, yeah, any other questions?
Yeah, is there any word on feedback from Waterford over the building that's under design right now?
There has been some feedback collected, and we're actually, a meeting is in the works with a stakeholder group, sort of leadership of a couple of key stakeholder groups out there in the coming weeks, I think, Mark.
Yeah, I think as of yesterday, I think we had maybe officially like 20 votes back, and there's a few comments on there. Generally, it's been pretty well received, but there, like Alton said, through the county staff, we got some feedback from a couple of the citizens who are leading some of the groups out there, and we're gonna meet with them here whenever we can get it scheduled.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? As usual, you guys do a good job. I think I'm getting tired saying it, but Mr. Lipinski.
9:30. Capital spending report, this is spending through March, was $25.2 million. The the projection was 25.6 million, so we're spending at about 98% of the projection, so really close. The only thing I'll point out is if you look at the table on the bottom row for the water, the actual is 238% of the projection, and I believe that that was just due to a reimbursement to a developer that was paid out earlier than it was anticipated during the year. So that's just what's driven that particular category up a little bit higher. But any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. Thank you.
I just had one other comment on the tentative next meeting agenda. We talked about it, Savita and I. It looks like a pretty heavy schedule. And you mentioned that you were going to look at it again and just see, because if you include all of them, that's a pretty, I mean, he can't do it all.
No, there'll be
No,
other,
seriously.
there'll be other presenters as well. Yeah, we look at it every month. And so we'll look at it again and we'll see what we need to bring forward and what we can push off to another month. We don't meet in July, so May and June tend to get a little crowded because otherwise there's a big break for us. So.
Suck it up.
Or we gotta get a big tub of water.
There are no other questions. Can I make a move to adjourn? Get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.